My entitled wife said, "I only married you because you were the safe option." I replied, "Thanks for that." Then I transferred the savings, left a note, and disappeared for a month. When I returned, her soulmate was broke, the lease was due, and my lawyer was ready. She called me a monster. I told her, no, I was a starter home. Now I'm just empty. I always notice the small things. It's what makes me good at my job. Miss one blip, one blink, and you've got a mess in the sky that can't be undone. So when I saw her tablet sitting there on the coffee table, screen still glowing, it hit me like a silent alarm. Lila never left her devices unlocked. Not even for a minute. She said it was about security, about patient confidentiality. But this was careless. Or maybe it was something else. She was already in the bathroom, the sound of water running muffled through the half-shut door. Steam leaked under the frame. I stood there for a second, heart picking up speed. Then I sat down and picked up the tablet. My name is Ben. I'm 41 years old, live just outside of Baltimore, and I've spent the last 11 years married to a woman who I thought was the most grounded person I'd ever met. I didn't go looking for anything. That's the thing. I wasn't suspicious. I was tired, burned out, but something in me reached for that screen anyway. Not nosiness. Instinct. The screen was already on a messaging app. Blue and gray bubbles, stretching months back. The name at the top, Victor. I didn't know a Victor. At first, I thought maybe it was someone from her residency program. Maybe an old college friend. But the tone was off. It wasn't flirty, not in the traditional sense, but it was worse somehow. It was intentional. Intimate. Words crafted like blueprints. Words you don't send someone unless you've mapped out a future. She called him her muse. Her true north. Said things like, "You make the fog make sense." And then, buried in a message from a few weeks ago, came the punch I never saw coming. Ben was the stability I needed to start my life. Victor is the fire that will make it worth living. I didn't react right away. My fingers didn't tremble. My pulse didn't spike. It was more like everything just slipped into slow motion. Like the sound drops out right before a plane hits the ground. I sat there, tablet balanced on my thigh, reading her words about a man who wasn't me. Reading her map out a life I wasn't part of. Not because I died. Not because I left. But because she had already started building the next version without me. In the bathroom, the water kept running. She was probably exfoliating, humming to herself, unaware that her entire life had just split open in the living room. I didn't yell. I didn't even move. I just stared at the screen, letting the reality settle around me like the quiet after a plane disappears from radar. This wasn't a betrayal wrapped in passion. It was calculated. Strategic. Like I was never the destination, just the launch pad. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there next to her, her breathing steady, unaware, while mine traced the edges of a life that had just fractured beyond repair. The next morning, I got up before Lila. That wasn't unusual. I often started my days early, checking flight schedules or responding to FAA messages before the sun came up. But this time, it wasn't work pulling me out of bed. It was clarity. I made coffee like I always did. 2 cups. One with a little oat milk for her. I even toasted her favorite bread and spread the overpriced raspberry jam we picked up from that orchard in Vermont. Routine buys you time. When she finally padded into the kitchen, robe tied loosely, hair still damp, she kissed my cheek and smiled. "You're sweet," she murmured, sipping her cup. I nodded. Didn't trust myself to speak yet. She sat at the counter with her tablet, same one from last night, and scrolled without a hint of guilt. Like nothing had shifted. Like I didn't know. I watched her for a moment and then turned back to my laptop. Opened my work portal. Clicked into the vacation tracker. I had over 6 weeks saved up. I logged 4 of them. Family emergency, I typed into the notes field. Then I opened our joint bank app. We had a shared property savings account, something we started when we thought we'd buy a place on the Eastern Shore. Lila rarely touched it. Said she wanted me to handle the logistics. Said I was better with the numbers. Fine by me. I moved the maximum daily transfer into my personal account, nothing drastic, just below the flagging threshold. Set a phone alarm for the same time tomorrow to do it again. Clean. Legal. Silent. By noon, I had made a list of everything I would take. Not clothes or books or keepsakes. Just the essentials. My FAA certifications. Backup drives. A worn box of my late father's cufflinks. And a weathered leather satchel filled with first-edition detective novels, the only frivolous thing I allowed myself. I didn't touch any of her things. Didn't make a mess. Didn't even open the bedroom closet. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I was executing a plan. At 3:42 p.m., while Lila was on a video call in the study, I walked into the kitchen and pulled a yellow sticky note from the drawer. Wrote in block letters. "Thanks for making your priorities clear. You'll find I've made mine." I didn't sign it. At 3:44, I powered off my phone, the real one, and dropped it in the drawer beneath the silverware. Next to it, I placed the spare key to the condo. At 3:47, I stepped into the elevator with a duffel, a satchel, and a burner phone I'd activated with a random prepaid SIM. No contacts, no cloud backups, no trail. I drove out of the city with the windows cracked just enough to let the wind blur the sound of my own breathing. I didn't have a destination, just forward. Somewhere around the Delaware line, the sky started changing. Gray stretched out in thin strands, like smoke trails after something crashes but before anyone knows it's gone down. That night, in a chain motel off the interstate, I lay on the bed with the burner face up on the nightstand and my badge wallet beside it. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if she'd read the note yet, if she'd panic or just pivot. I didn't care either way. The man she called her stability had just pulled every bolt loose, and he hadn't made a sound. I ended up in a fog-drenched bay town I remembered visiting once as a teenager. I didn't know why that place came to mind. Maybe it was the smell of salt or the way the air felt a little thicker there, like it held secrets without judgment. Or maybe I just needed to land somewhere no one would think to look. The lodge I checked into was small, family-run, probably hadn't been renovated since the late 90s. The wallpaper peeled a little near the outlets, and the shower head squealed when I turned it on. But it had Wi-Fi, a door that locked, and a view of the water, or at least, the fog where water was supposed to be. I set up my laptop on the little wooden desk by the window, kept my FAA inbox open, replied to 1 or 2 emails a day, enough to maintain the illusion of presence. No calls, no video, just typed replies in silence. The lodge owners, a couple in their 60s, didn't ask many questions. I was just another quiet guest escaping something. They were kind in that distant, small-town way, offering coffee in the mornings and nods in the hallway. I didn't engage beyond that. I wore the same jacket every day, let my beard grow out, kept my phone off unless I was transferring funds. I didn't explore the town, didn't make friends. I wasn't there to become someone new. I was there to let the old version disappear. My only tether was Logan. Logan was the one person who knew. He had trained with me back in the day, 2 guys in tower headsets, half deaf from static, half blind from coffee. We drifted some over the years, but every now and then he'd check in. When I sent him a text from the burner, he responded instantly. "You good?" he asked. "Define good," I replied. "Alive. For now." That became our shorthand. Every few days, I'd check in. He never asked for details I didn't offer, but he gave me updates, just enough. "Lila's calling your mom. Crying," he wrote one morning. "Left a voicemail for me, too. Said you vanished in a mental fog." Her words. A few days later, "She's telling people you've had some kind of breakdown. Playing it soft. Concerned wife. It's a performance." Then, "She tried to log into your shared bank account yesterday. Got flagged. Thought you'd want to know." I stared at the text for a long time. Another message came hours later. Money's not the only thing she's scrambling for. Narrative slipping. She's shifting gears. How so? Now it's abandonment. Telling your sister you've been unstable for months. Says you left her because you're emotionally repressed. I read that one 3 times. I didn't feel rage. Didn't throw the phone or curse her name. I just sat back in the stiff lodge chair, listening to the gulls cry into the fog outside, and let the numbness take over. Let her spin. Let her perform. She could only control the story if I stayed on the stage. And I was long gone. Logan's messages came faster that week. He'd started digging on his own, not because I asked him to, but because he knew me well enough to see where this was headed. "Found him," Logan wrote late one night. "Victor." My thumb hovered over the screen. I hadn't read that name in days. Had almost managed to forget the syllables of it, how casually she called him her muse. "What do you mean found him?" I texted back. "Victor R., the one from the messages. He's not some rising artist in DC like she made him out to be." "Then what is he?" "Freelance caricature guy. Mall work. Birthday parties. Lives in a shared rental in Arlington. Craigslist ad says he'll draw you as a wizard for $50. I stared at the message, letting the image build. This was the man Lila tied her future to? Her true north drew cartoon dragons for beer money? She told him she couldn't wait to build a life together. I typed. Said he was her fire. Logan's reply came fast. "Hope she likes cold showers and shared utilities." His roommates list their professions as aspiring and between things. The next morning, I called the landlord of our apartment. Had to use a payphone to avoid trace, something that made me feel absurd, like a fugitive from a movie. But that's what I'd become. A man navigating a system he helped build, now trying to slip through its cracks. The landlord remembered me. He was polite but firm. "Lisa's still in both names, Ben. You and Lila are legally tied to the unit unless someone new co-signs. Has anyone tried?" She brought someone in last week for a walkthrough. Wouldn't give me his full name. Just said he was considering it. Seemed unprepared. I knew it was Victor. Knew he probably saw the rent and backed out fast. You can't pay $3,000 a month with a folding table and pastel markers. I thanked the landlord and hung up. My palms were cold against the metal phone. Later that day, the burner buzzed. A text from Logan, forwarded from my mother. "She made a mistake, Ben. Don't ruin her life over it. You were the steady one. Can't you forgive her? Another one right after, from my sister. She's not perfect, but she's hurting. What are you getting out of this, really? I didn't answer either. What was I getting out of this? Nothing. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just distance. Lila had built a fantasy and tried to pack it with fragile bones. Victor wasn't ready for it. Her friends weren't buying it. The story kept shifting because it had no spine. And me? I was the villain now. The unstable man who walked away from the woman who had, in reality, erased him long before he disappeared. I closed the flip phone and stared out at the bay. The fog was thinner today. I could see water. It was time. Not to return, but to confront. To end it right. Before someone else rewrote it all for me. I gave her a week's notice. One message from the burner. Meet me at the apartment. Saturday. Noon. Just us. She didn't reply, but I knew she'd show. When I pulled up that afternoon, the building looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the time away. Or maybe distance has a way of stripping the shine off things that once felt permanent. The hallway smelled like takeout and cheap perfume. I hadn't missed it. She opened the door before I knocked, like she'd been watching from the peephole. Her hair was pulled back in a bun I'd only ever seen at funerals. She wore a black blouse, high collar, sleeves buttoned to the wrist. No jewelry. No makeup, save for the mascara that had already started to smudge. She looked like someone playing the role of a widow before the body had even cooled. Ben, she said softly, I scanning my face for something anger, pain, maybe forgiveness. I gave her none of it. I stepped inside. The apartment was clean, almost sterile. She'd cleared the counters. Burned a candle that smelled like eucalyptus and something else, something artificial. The kind of scent people use when they want to reset a space. We sat across from each other in the living room. I didn't take off my coat. She clasped her hands in her lap and inhaled like a swimmer preparing for a long dive. I've been trying to find the right way to say this, she began. Here we go. I know I've hurt you. And I've been thinking a lot about why I did what I did. I think I felt lost. You've always been so grounded, so focused. And I guess I got caught up in the idea of something else. Something different. Her voice cracked just enough to sound honest. Not too much. Just enough. I didn't mean to lie to you. I didn't know how to be the version of me that fit in your world anymore. I felt like a shadow. Like a passenger. I let her go on. Let her pile up the words like sandbags against the truth. You have every right to be hurt, she said, finally meeting my eyes. But I hope you can understand that it wasn't about not loving you. It was complicated. I waited until the silence settled. Until she leaned forward, hand hovering between us like she wanted to bridge a gap that no longer existed. Then I said it. I read everything, Lila. She froze. The blood drained from her face. All of it, I continued. Victor. The messages. The plans. The part where you said I was the launch pad. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. You said I was the stability you needed. A placeholder. Training wheels. She tried, but her voice broke. You weren't supposed to see that, she whispered. There it was. Not denial. Not remorse. Just the raw horror of being caught. I stood. I wasn't supposed to wake up, right? She looked down. The candle flickered. Somewhere outside, a car horn echoed through the narrow street. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. Just looked around the place I used to call home and realized I didn't feel anything at all. Whatever performance she had planned, it ended the moment I stepped on stage with the script in my hands. And for the first time, she had no lines left. When the silence broke, it wasn't gentle. Lila's face crumpled and then rebuilt itself within seconds, widowed a child of firestorm. She stood up fast, arms shaking, mascara smearing just beneath her lashes. You can't just walk in here and throw that in my face, she said, voice trembling like it couldn't decide between panic and fury. You ghosted me, Ben. You disappeared. Do you know what that did to me? I didn't answer. You left me in this apartment, not knowing if you were dead or planning to ruin me. My own mother thought you had a breakdown. She was ready to file a missing persons report. You told her I was unstable, I said flatly. That's what you do. You spin the story that serves you. Her jaw clenched. I had to say something. You wouldn't answer. I didn't know what you were planning. You thought I'd go quietly. I didn't. She backed up like I'd slapped her. You're not being fair. You have no idea what it's been like for me. I have some idea, I said, and reached into my coat pocket. I pulled out a printed copy of the prenup. Lila went quiet. Still, her eyes tracked the paper like it might bite her. You remember this? I asked. The document you said was insulting. The one you signed without reading because it was just a formality? She said nothing. It has a fidelity clause. You violate the terms, you forfeit any claim to jointly held funds, unless those funds were earned equally. You remember our salaries. Still nothing. 90% of the shared account is mine. The rest is your savings. What you have left now. I was never after your money, she whispered. You sure spent it like you were, I replied. And for someone not after it, You sure look panicked. Her hands balled into fists. So what now? You bankrupt me? Leave me with nothing? That's the plan. No, I said, calm as ever. I'll pay the lease break fee. You have 4 weeks to move out. The words landed like a thud in the middle of the room. Lila blinked. You're not serious. I've already talked to the landlord. He knows I'm coming off the lease. If you want to stay here, you'll need a cosigner. Maybe Victor can help. Her face twisted. You bastard. I didn't blink. You destroy our marriage. You destroyed it, I cut in. I just removed myself from the wreckage. She started pacing. You're not thinking clearly. You're in shock or you've snapped. This isn't you. This is me, I said, stepping toward the door. This is me finally awake. Her voice cracked as I opened the door. Ben, please. I have nothing. You had me, I said without turning. And you gave me away. I closed the door behind me as she sank onto the floor in the hallway, her sobs chasing me down the stairwell but never catching up. I stepped out into the cold Baltimore afternoon, the kind of sharp air that slices through fabric and fog, and for the first time in months, I wasn't dragging a weight behind me. I wasn't looking back. Let her cry. Let her burn. Let her call me a monster to anyone who'll listen. But in the story that matters, the real one, I'm not the monster. I'm the exit sign. The one she ignored until the building caught fire. It didn't take long for the collapse to begin, but it took a lot longer to end. 3 weeks after I served the lease notice, the first legal letter hit my inbox. Lila had lawyered up, not just any lawyer, but the kind who wears courtroom lipstick and throws around terms like abandonment and emotional cruelty before shaking your hand. She was coming after me. Despite the prenup, despite the texts, despite everything, she claimed I'd created a hostile environment. That I'd vanished without warning caused her mental deterioration and left her with no choice but to seek safety and clarity elsewhere. Those were the exact words. I remember them because they made me laugh in the middle of my attorney's conference room. My lawyer didn't laugh. She just nodded, said, "They're going to drag this out. You ready for that?" I said yes. But I wasn't. Not really. The hearings were spaced out like landmines. Every few weeks, a new document to refute, a new lie to correct, a new version of reality I had to pick apart under oath. And then came the one that hurt worse than all of it combined. Lila's attorney submitted a character affidavit. From my sister. It was 3 pages long. Handwritten. Careful. Even polite. Said things like, I've always worried about Ben's emotional walls, and he can be very closed off and hard to read, even when he's struggling. It didn't accuse me of abuse. That would have been easy to discredit. No, it was worse. It was subtle. Like a drop of ink in clear water, spreading just enough to cloud everything. When I confronted her, my sister said, I didn't say anything untrue. I didn't want them to think you were perfect. That wouldn't help anyone. You helped her, I said quietly. You picked her. She cried. I didn't. In the end, none of it mattered. 6 months in, the judge ruled. The prenup held. The fidelity clause was airtight. The messages were admitted as evidence. Every paragraph about Victor was read into the record. Every emoji. Every whispered plan. Lila looked straight ahead the whole time, her lawyer whispering damage control in her ear. The ruling was blunt. She would get nothing from the joint account. I was entitled to full withdrawal. She would cover her own legal costs. We were divorced. When we left the courtroom, she didn't look at me. I didn't expect her to. But Logan called me that night. He said Victor was gone. Gone how? Gone. Took off the week the ruling came down. Moved out of the shared rental. No forwarding info. Left her with his half of the electric bill and a handwritten note that just said, sorry. I said nothing. She lost her job too, he added. Clinic cut her hours and she stopped showing up. HR told a friend of mine they offered her help and she declined. Guess she moved back in with her parents last week. I leaned back in the motel chair and stared at the ceiling. There was no joy, no victory, just the quiet math of damage. I got the money. She got the story she told. And I got to be right. But being right doesn't keep you warm. It doesn't fix betrayal or bring your sister back. It doesn't make your name feel like your own again. It just means the war is over. And everything's been scorched. The day after the final ruling, I went back to the apartment one last time. Not to say goodbye. Not to revisit memories. I went to erase them. I'd asked the landlord for a half-day grace period to clear the last of my things. Lila had already moved out. Or, more accurately, disappeared. The place was hollow and echoing, like a hotel room after a long stay. Her scent was gone. Her voice, her photos, the little ceramic vase she insisted on keeping near the window, all of it gone. I loaded my things quickly. What little I had left fit in 2 boxes. Old tax files, a few jackets, a framed photo of me and my dad at a baseball game from a decade ago. That was it. Everything else I sold. The rug from Madrid? Gone. The Japanese espresso machine she swore made better coffee than anything in Baltimore? Sold within 2 hours. The bookshelf we built during lockdown, arguing about whether to alphabetize by title or genre, listed it as custom hardwood, and watched the buyer carry it out without blinking. I kept the cufflinks, the detective novels, the burner phone, though I hadn't turned it on in days. Then I rented a small flat across town, not far from the airport, but quiet. 3rd floor, no shared walls. A balcony barely big enough for a chair. Perfect. I didn't decorate. I didn't hang anything. I just unpacked my laptop, stacked the books in the closet, and started making appointments I'd avoided for years. Therapy. The woman I saw was gentle but clinical. She asked if I wanted to talk about the marriage. I said no. Not at first. I told her I wanted to understand how someone like me, detail-obsessed, clear-headed, good in emergencies, could have missed every single warning sign. She nodded like she'd heard that before. You didn't miss the signs, she said after a few sessions. You just didn't think they applied to you. That one stuck with me. My mother called a few weeks later. Left a voicemail. Her voice was softer than I remembered. I didn't know the whole story, Ben. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I was wrong. She didn't ask me to call back. That, more than anything, made me believe she meant it. My sister never apologized. We haven't spoken since the affidavit. Logan checks in sometimes. Sends articles about small towns near the coast. This one has a tower job open, he'll say. Might not be a bad place to disappear for a while. I think about it more than I admit. And then, one night, an email landed in my inbox. From someone I barely remembered, a colleague from FAA training who transferred to the West Coast years ago. The subject line just said, I know what it's like to survive a slow explosion. No details. No small talk. Just that sentence. I didn't reply, but I read it 3 times. I'm not rebuilding yet. I'm not healing. I'm clearing rubble. Brick by brick. Because the life I had wasn't real. It was a structure built on borrowed names and quiet roles. And I was complicit in that, for being dependable, for being useful, for being safe. Not anymore. Now, I wake up early, make black coffee, and sit in silence. No rings. No pings. No lies. Just the sound of nothing. And for now, that's enough.